Hello, good morning. It is a beautiful day. How's everyone doing? Hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. So today I'm going to be doing a deep dive into specifically how much do undocumented immigrants contribute in taxes? And the reason why I'm doing this is because there's this talking point, this very false talking point from the right, that somehow undocumented immigrants are mooching off of the economy. And when you actually break down the numbers, when you actually look into the specifics, it's quite the opposite. And I'm not here to try and push any sort of political agenda. I'm here just giving you raw, factual information. And I looked at a lot of the data that I'm going to be using is from a group called ITEP, the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. They are a nonpartisan nonprofit that is designed to help overview tax policy and everything like that. And I'm just going to break down what this current system is. So again, I obviously have my own opinions, my own, takes, analysis on what I think should happen, though I'm also just going to review what our current system is currently doing. So how much do undocumented immigrants contribute in taxes? It's more than you think. And because they're undocumented, because they don't have citizenship, they are barred. They are not qualified to start receiving any aid or compensation or any sort of rewards from the system. And so a lot of undocumented immigrants pay a lot into the system, but then because of their status can't access stuff. And I'm going to be breaking down a lot of that here. Now, a very common talking point from the right is that, undocumented immigrants are mooching off the government and they are receiving all of this stuff, which is just objectively not true. Sorry, if that bursts your bubble, it's just not true. And I'm here to kind of just break down, everything that we know in regards to how much undocumented immigrants actually contribute to the economy. But first, the real reason why I'm doing this is because we see lots of headlines coming out of Chicago. Chicago mayor flat out says that Trump declared war on his city after president calls for his arrest. View host dares Christians not to feel brokenhearted at children begging ICE to leave their parents. Families being separated because of the cruelty from ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement thugs. A pastor in Chicago was pepperballed. ICE sued after videos capture pastor shot with chemical pellets at a peaceful protest. Illinois and Chicago sue to block National Guard deployment, take a swipe at Trump admin over the Department of War. You have MAGA, right-wing influencers like Benny Johnson that are posting AI videos of beating up, what I guess are undocumented immigrants and women, which is disgusting. Chicago police say 27 of their officers were affected by tear gas used by the feds. And this is sick. The White House accuses Chicago mayor of defending killers and rapists with ICE-free zones. You get my point. So with all of the cruelty towards undocumented people, the far right, Fox News, Newsmax, OANN, these far right-wing propagandists, these influencers, their job is to sell fear. Fear, 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 fear. Oh my God. You have Marco mooching off the government. You have all this fear around undocumented immigrants. So much so that I'm thinking of being an undocumented immigrant for Halloween. Because apparently that's the scariest thing to some Republicans. And with all that being said, with the dehumanization that is going on towards undocumented people, let me just point out that we, as everyone on the physical continent, in the physical, tangible borders of the United States, we are all on stolen land from Native Americans. My family, one half of my family were the colonizers. The people that, slaughtered them and, fought England to declare independence from them. But then the other half were immigrants. Now, that doesn't make me a bad person. It's important to understand your heritage in that sense. But also, just pointing out, I wanted to ask myself, okay, the far right constantly thinks that undocumented people are mooching off the government. I want to actually go through and verify, is that true? Is that not true? How much are undocumented people actually contributing to the government? So anyway, I just wanted to break all this down for you all. So this is going to be a deep dive. I appreciate every single one of you. I appreciate every single one of you, even if you don't like me, okay? This is going to be a deep dive live. So I'm not going to be looking at the chat. I'm not going to, be answering stuff. If there is a super chat, then moderators, please text me and I will review it. But I want to just break all this down for you all. So starting from the top here, are y'all ready? Are y'all ready? Type yes if you are ready, and we'll dive right into it. Okay, here we go. Deep dive. How much do undocumented immigrants contribute in taxes? It's more than you think. And because they aren't citizens, they don't qualify for programs our taxpayer dollars fund. So governments have taxes and spending. So the government collects revenue by taxing their citizens, and then they spend those taxes. They spend that revenue in programs to theoretically help their citizens. So the thing is, undocumented immigrants contribute taxes, but because they're not citizens, they don't qualify to receive certain benefits through the government. That includes Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, TANF, temporary assistance to needy families, some SNAP benefits, meaning that these people actually put a lot more money into the system, and then that money is gone from them. They don't get access to that. Whereas me, I am a U.S. North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina native. And so I, as a native of this land, I was born here, I contribute taxes. And because of my status as a citizen, and depending on other things like your income or whatever, I can access certain programs because I'm a citizen. Whereas other people can't because of their citizenship status. So a lot of undocumented immigrants actually contribute so much more into the system than they are qualified to receive. That's not a political statement. That's not a political opinion. That's just an objective fact. Cool? So let's actually break down more about the specific numbers here. So I first asked Grok, I said, how much do undocumented immigrants pay in taxes? And it came up with this group called the ITEP, which is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that does a lot of tax breakdowns and economic breakdowns regarding everything happening in the country. So they did this report, and this was back in 2024. Now, because it takes a long time to go through and do all of this, I'm going to be using some 2022 data, along with some, miscellaneous data in between. But all of this is from the ITEP, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit. Make sure to send some likes if you're enjoying the breakdown so far. Here are the key findings. Undocumented immigrants paid $96.7 billion with a B dollars in federal, state, and local taxes in 2022. That's a lot of money, 96.7 billion. And that's in 2022. Just imagine what it is now. Most of that amount, the 59.4 billion, was paid to the federal government, while the remaining 37.3 billion was paid to state and local governments. When you break it down, undocumented immigrants paid federal, state, and local taxes of $8,889 per person. In other words, for every 1 million undocumented immigrants who reside in the country, public services receive $8.9 billion in additional tax revenue. So, breaking all this down here, undocumented immigrants in 2022 contributed $96.7 billion into the economy. Now, that's a big number. And when you break it down, you can see here, there's federal social insurance taxes, there's federal income tax, there's miscellaneous federal taxes, there's state and local taxes. Because of their status, because they are undocumented, they are paying into our government, they're paying taxes, but then because they are not citizens, they don't qualify to receive things like Social Security, or Medicare, or TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, or some SNAP benefits, or Medicaid. Meaning that these people pump in money into the system and never see a return on their investment. Whereas me, a US citizen, or you, another US citizen, we pay into the system, and depending on our pre-existing conditions, how much income we have or whatever, we can then receive the benefits from the government. So these undocumented people are paying into the system and not receiving anything out of it. Now, I'm not trying to propose any sort of political policy change or anything. I'm just highlighting the objective reality. Undocumented immigrants pay a lot into our economy and receive very little out of it. That's just how it works. So this Republican far right-wing narrative that these undocumented people are mooching off the economy is 100% purely false. It is not happening. There are some programs which undocumented immigrants can access. That includes EMTALA, which is Emergency Medicaid, which was signed into law by Ronald Reagan, a further right-wing Republican, back in like 1980-something. Now, there's also some limited provisions that help programs to then help undocumented people. And we'll go into that later on. But I just wanted to do specifically a tax breakdown. So more than a third of the tax dollars paid by undocumented immigrants go towards payroll taxes. Payroll taxes are stuff that basically fund Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment. Which, again, undocumented people, because of their status, cannot access Social Security, cannot access Medicare. I would have to double check on unemployment. I'm pretty sure that's also a no. I'd have to double check that though. So imagine, put yourself in their shoes for a second. If you're an undocumented person and you pay taxes to the government, where you pay taxes, and then it's like, okay, that money's never going to come back to you. Whereas me, I'm a US citizen. So I pay taxes to the government. Sometimes I can get a tax refund. Sometimes I can receive benefits from the government depending on like your income, or maybe I have Medicaid or something through the government. Maybe there's a specific program that I qualify for that I can receive aid from the government. Undocumented people don't get that. They pay taxes knowing that that money is never going to come back to them. They live in a state where they pay money and never see a return on their investment. And that's because they're undocumented. Put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine taking how much was it? Undocumented immigrants, they pay, oh geez, what was the number? Hold on. Where was it? Hold on. Just a second. Undocumented immigrants pay $8,889 per person on average in 2022 in their taxes. Imagine taking $8,889 that you have right now and just burning it. No, like, we pay taxes, that money can come back to us and fund things that we can access as US citizens to the government. But for an undocumented person, it's like taking that money and just burning it. You're never going to see it again. You're never going to be able to, that money is just dead. That's what it's like. Put yourself in their shoes just to understand that. That's what it's like. Because they're undocumented, they can't access certain programs. That's not a political opinion, that's a fact. Just an objective fact. Because of someone's status, they can't access certain programs. That's how it works. So, going further on this breakdown here, you can see these are the tax contributions. More than a third of taxpayer dollars paid by tax dollars paid by undocumented immigrants go towards payroll taxes. And pause. If you're enjoying the live stream so far, please make sure to send some likes. If you're someone that's screaming at the top of your lungs in the chat here, trying to be obnoxious, blah, 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 seriously, I implore you just to listen and shut the fuck up just for a little bit, okay? I have the chat hidden away, but I can guarantee you that there's probably some loudmouth people in there. And again, I'm just trying to give you I'm not trying to tell you what to think either. I'm just giving you the information. This is just what it is. Like, what I am sharing here is just objectively how our system is set up. If you don't like that, or if you do like it, cool. I'm not here to debate that with you. This is a news live stream. Cool? I appreciate every single one of you. So undocumented immigrants back in 2022 paid $25.7 billion into Social Security, which again, because they're undocumented, they can't access Social Security. So basically, that's undocumented immigrants all collectively coming together and burning $25.7 billion of their money. $6.4 billion into Medicare, $1.8 billion into unemployment. That's where I was. So I was like, okay, let me just double check, let me just dot my I's, cross my T's, let me just double check. So do undocumented immigrants pay payroll taxes? They pay them, and payroll taxes are taxes withheld from an employee's wages by their employer or paid directly by the employers. This is stuff like Social Security, Medicare. This is also stuff that funds government operations, infrastructure, public services. But can undocumented immigrants collect Social Security? No, they're not eligible. They do not qualify to receive Social Security. They pay Social Security taxes through payroll tax, but they don't see the return on their investment. Imagine if you paid for something and then was never able to access it. Imagine paying for a subscription to a like a streaming service, and then because it's required by law, but then you are never able to access it because of a pre-existing condition. That's what it's like for undocumented people. They are required to pay taxes as a person residing in our land, but then they can't access the benefits from doing that. It's a one-sided affair where these people are paying money into a system where they never see a return on their investment. Put yourself in their shoes. Have some courage to put yourself in their shoes for a second and ask yourself how you would react participating in a system like that. And if you cannot put yourself in someone else's shoes, do not call yourself a Christian. Do not call yourself empathetic. Do not call yourself someone who is morally just. No, just don't do it. If you lack any ability to place yourself in someone else's shoes, then sorry. You seriously need to have you need to have an ego check, is what it is. Undocumented immigrants are not able to receive Social Security. They pay into it, but they never receive Social Security. So again, you're like, well, wait, how much was that? They paid $25.7 billion into Social Security, and that was back in 2022. So imagine it's even much higher now. And they never received that money. Actually, when you really come to think about it, undocumented immigrants are actually paying for U.S. citizens to receive Social Security. No, like, think about it like that. They're not able to participate, but their money is going towards helping other U.S. citizens receive Social Security. They're paying into a system knowing that they're never going to reap the benefits of it. And in fact, it's actually going to be U.S. citizens that receive those benefits. So when you actually think about it, undocumented immigrants are paying into the system, and we, as U.S. citizens, I'm including myself because I'm a U.S. citizen, are receiving the benefits of that. We're basically taking their lunch money. That's how, like, if you're one of these MAGA people that is so afraid of undocumented people, they're the ones helping fund your Medicare or your Social Security as well. Like, they don't receive those benefits, but they're paying for it. So maybe instead of demonizing, we should say, oh, thank you. I know it's annoying that you don't receive the access because of your, lack of citizenship. But, so honestly, we should kind of like thank them when you really think about it. Like, anyway, continuing onward here, just breaking down the numbers. Undocumented immigrants, okay, so this is a whole thing that I actually just learned about, and I'd love to dive deeper into this. There are undocumented immigrants that will have a fake social security number because they are trying to say, hey, they're trying to hide from the fact that they're not a citizen. There are a lot of people in this country that you may know people personally. They might not have told you that they're not a citizen, but they are trying to do everything they can to hide the fact that they're not a citizen. Because it's hard. Going through and getting citizenship is a long process because we don't have a system that is beefed up to be able to make that a swift, efficient process. There are a lot more people that are non-citizens living in this country than you may think. You probably know people in your personal life. And yes, that includes some of you MAGA people. You probably know people that are undocumented, but have they told you? No. That all being said, undocumented workers, many of them actually work with false social security numbers, and they pay social security taxes. So there are some that will, I have to look more into it, but they will have a social security number for the sake of saying, yeah, I have a social security number, but either it's a stolen one or a fake one or whatever, but they still pay taxes on it, but the funds are credited to the owner of the number, not the immigrant. So let's say that you are an undocumented person and you have a social security number. Let's say that you decided to try and take someone else's social security number. And you use that on your taxes. You're paying taxes, but then it doesn't go to you. It actually goes to the person that has that number. I have a social security number. I, of course, will not reveal it. But I'm sure that it's very, very possible that someone, maybe an undocumented person, also is paying into using that number. So they actually, as a form of survival, actually will take a number not to be nefarious, but in order to kind of just give the illusion that they're a citizen for the sake of survival. So an individual taxpayer identification number, an ITIN, does not qualify someone for Social Security benefits, and it does not provide an individual authorization to work legally in the U.S. And it also does not change an individual's immigration status. But what's really, really interesting is that there are many undocumented people who will pay Social Security taxes on a stolen Social Security number as a way to oh, I'm trying to blend in and be a citizen. Except what's interesting is they're paying all that money, but the credit doesn't go to them. The credit does not go to them whatsoever. So Colby Van Zickler, founder of F3 Wealth Management, says, for most, their intent is not to defraud individuals. It's purely motivated by financial survival. Many undocumented immigrants have been paying into Social Security system for years by using fake Social Security numbers, borrowed Social Security numbers, and individual taxpayer ID numbers. They're paying into the system, but then they don't receive any of the benefits because they are undocumented. They can't receive those benefits because they're undocumented. So they're paying into a system and never seeing a return on their investment. That's not a political opinion. That's not me trying to push any sort of agenda. It's just a fact. A lot of undocumented people pay taxes, but never, because of their status, can't access programs. The way governments are set up, of course, is you have taxes and spending. So I, as a U.S. citizen, pay taxes, and then, depending on my income or pre-existing conditions or, whatever, I can access programs with that. The way that governments work is basically it's a pool of money that everyone pays into, and then there's policy shaped around it so that people can access that pot of money. That's how governments are. When you boil it down, that's kind of how it works. So if you're undocumented, you have to pay taxes, but then you don't receive the benefits of those programs because you cannot apply to be a part of them because you're not a citizen. So here comes an opinionated take from me. I don't understand, with all of that being said, why is there so much fear, hysteria, demonization, and just absolute vitriol towards undocumented people? Why? Why is there so much anger and fear coming from the cowardly right? Always about these undocumented people stealing and mooching off the government. In fact, we actually steal and mooch off of them because they pay taxes and then don't receive the benefits. In fact, it actually helps other tax-paying citizens receive extra benefits when you really want to break it down. So it's frustrating to me to see dehumanization from a moral perspective. But then also, when you really break it down, there are a lot of people that are undocumented that pay into the system and never receive the benefits. Let alone that, okay, they're not citizens, but they're also human beings. They're participating in a system where they never see a return on their investment. So it's just worth pointing out how much anger, vitriol is really just at the core of the far right Republican framing of immigration. They're so angry about these people being here, but they don't actually look at how much they contribute. A lot of undocumented immigrants take jobs that ordinary citizens don't want to take. They are the people who pick your fruit. They are the people who often are in kind of slave labor conditions, which is awful. They are the people that are working for a very low paycheck, and they're the people cleaning your office buildings. They are the people that are building your roads, building your houses. They're the grocery store clerks. These are people that are taking low-level wage jobs because they're just trying to exist. They're just trying to live. And what does America do? What does the right wing do in response? Dehumanize them. Spread lies and misinformation about them. And then these people that claim to be Christians, out of all things, Christians, spread fear, hate, and misinformation about them. Like, I'm sorry, but this is not a Netflix original series. We don't need to go into some crazy fictional scenario. Like, it's just disgusting how much they are brutalized. And now ICE is going around and rounding all these people up and dehumanizing them, telling them to go back to their original countries. In some cases, U.S. citizens telling them to go back to their original country if they look Hispanic or Latino or anything like that. It's like, I was originally born here. It's just, the brutality is disgusting. But also, there's just so much misinformation about these people that are living among us. They pay a lot of money into a system that they never reap the benefits of. Put that in perspective. Put yourself in their shoes. Now you might say, Scott, well, why do you care so much? You're not an undocumented person. Why do you care? Why do you care? Because I'm a fucking human being. If I see brutality towards other people, even if they're different from me, I'm going to say, hey, that's not okay. Since when did it become okay or acceptable for people to completely give up on any sense of common sense morality? But let me continue this breakdown here. So undocumented people, of course, do not qualify to receive Social Security, yet they pay a lot of money into payroll taxes, which funds Social Security, to the tune of $25.7 billion in 2022. Same with Medicare, $6.4 billion in 2022 that undocumented immigrants paid into Medicare, yet they cannot receive Medicare. they are barred, they are ineligible from receiving it because of their citizenship status or lack thereof. So, undocumented immigrants are generally not eligible for Medicare, and Medicare is a federal health insurance program primarily for U.S. citizens and legal residents age 65 or older, of course. And again, here's the money. This is what it is broken down. I also want to shift to talking about state and local governments. While the federal government collects the bulk of its revenue through various kinds of income taxes, states and localities levy a wider array of tax types. Nearly 39% of the total tax dollars paid by undocumented immigrants are to state and local governments. So you can see here that you have a lot of money also going to state and local governments through property taxes, personal and business income taxes, sales and excise tax. The undocumented immigrant population contribute, which, by the way, this actually blew my mind, okay? The undocumented immigrant population and its tax contributions are relatively concentrated in just a few states. So if you want to look at the breakdown of where a lot of undocumented immigrants live, it's primarily, a lot of it is concentrated in 6 states, but then at large you extrapolate that and it includes like another 14. And those states are, of course, California, Texas, New York, Florida, Illinois, and New Jersey. And the money that these states take in from taxes from undocumented people, California is $8.5 billion. Texas, $4.9 billion. New York, $3.1 billion. Florida, $1.8 billion. Illinois, $1.5 billion. New Jersey, $1.3 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Now, what also is really, really interesting, I want to also show you this. State and local tax contributions by undocumented people. So you can see those 6 states: California, Texas, Florida, Illinois, New York, and New Jersey. There are also a lot of honorable mentions of states that collect between $300 million to $1 billion in taxes, state and local taxes by undocumented people. That includes Washington State, Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. So those states also receive a good chunk of money in state and local taxes from undocumented people. Now this breakdown, going further on this, actually blew my mind. So let me put this here. Okay. Measured relative to their incomes, undocumented immigrants nationwide paid an average effective state and local tax rate of 8.9%. So they paid 8.9% of their income, their how much you make per year, then you pay 8.9% of it in state and local taxes. And that goes to funding infrastructure, services, stuff like that. Now, when you compare this to the top 1%, the most affluent taxpayers, they only pay 7.2% of their income, their yearly income, to state and local taxes, meaning that they have a lower tax rate than undocumented immigrants. So we don't even have a flat tax system. We have a regressive tax system for undocumented people, meaning that the top 1% of Americans, the super affluent, whether they are Republican, Democrat, independent, white, black, blue, green, love pineapple and pizza, doesn't matter. The top 1% of affluent taxpayer Americans, they have a tax rate of 7.2%. Whereas undocumented people have a higher tax rate of 8.9%. So I did this breakdown here. When you go and ask what the median income is for an undocumented person, it's $30,000 a year, which I believe that's poverty level. Now, they are taxed at 8.9% of their income for state and local taxes. So they pay about $3,370 for their state and local taxes. Now, the median house income for someone who's a part of the top 1% is $794,000 a year. Now, they have a lower tax rate. So 7.2% goes to of their income there. That's $110,277. Now, you're like, oh, well, that's a lot of money. Right. You don't even have a flat tax rate. But I just want to point out, if you're one of these people that's defending the rich, it is a drop in the bucket for them. Oh, $110,000. Oh, okay. But for these people, for undocumented people, this amount of money hurts more being taken from them than a rich person having that amount of money taken from them for taxes. Because when it comes down to it, you don't have... Everyone goes and pays for the same kinds of grocery bills. We all access some of the same programs. This hurts more because of, oh gosh, what's the term? The term is like, every dollar that a lower income person earns has more of like, geez, I need to brush up on the term of what it is, but like, there's more value per dollar for a lower income person than it is for a wealthy person. Because it's like, if you're one of these low income people, when you lose a certain amount of money, that hurts way harder. Like, it hits you harder than a super wealthy person losing that kind of money. Anyway, I need to brush up on that to really fully talk about it. But I'm gonna have to go here soon, though I want to put this in perspective here. So, undocumented immigrants, they pay a lot in taxes. They pay a lot in taxes. And that's $96.7 billion. A good chunk of that is federal, but also a good chunk of it is state. Almost 40% of what they pay are state and local taxes. Now, one thing that I found really interesting, let's pretend that we're going to extend citizenship to a lot of undocumented people. If you extend citizenship to undocumented people, they would actually pay more in taxes. Granting work authorization could boost the figures of how much undocumented people pay in taxes, potentially by 10 to 20%. So when you actually break that down by the numbers here, these are the state and tax contributions by undocumented immigrants. In the state of Alabama, their current contributions are $146 million a year. If all of the undocumented immigrants in Alabama were just granted citizenship, they were granted legal status to be here, you would see a positive tax change in, I think that's $34 million. It's hard to see for me because I have this menu thing that's in the way. But you go through and you can see California. Their current contributions are $8.4 billion. And these are the potential contributions with legalizing all the undocumented people, it actually shoots up to $10 billion, $10.3 billion. So here's the thing. The United States is leaving money on the table. They're leaving money on the table. If we were to grant citizenship to undocumented people, which in my view, as long as we have a swift process that allows us to weed out people that might be dangerous, have a criminal record or something like that. But if we actually go through and fund an immigration system that helps us process, have more immigration judges, more staff to process cases and go through, we legalize undocumented people for the sake that they want to be here, we're actually going to add a lot of money to our economy. It would be a huge surplus for our government in regards to actually funding programs. But again, these undocumented people already pay taxes. They pay taxes into programs they can't receive benefits of. So actually, the United States is leaving money on the table by not legalizing certain people. So are we really going to let prejudice, anger, and fear get in the way of having a country that works for everyone? Like, when you really think about it, there are states that are leaving money on the table because of their fear of undocumented immigrants. That's what it breaks down to. Like, you go through and you look at this, you can see these are the current contributions. If they were to grant legal status to undocumented people, their tax revenues would go up. Florida's tax revenue would go up by $154 million. Like, that's a lot. My home state of North Carolina, it'd go up by $151 million. We could fund a lot of programs with that. Anyway, I appreciate every single one of you. Basically, in conclusion, undocumented immigrants face a harsher tax code because they pay into systems. They pay payroll taxes. They pay, all these taxes to programs which they can't qualify for because they're undocumented. So they can't access Social Security or Medicare or, temporary assistance to needy families. They can't access Medicaid. There are some narrow provisions in which undocumented people can receive some sort of government assistance, but it's very narrow. And most of that is EMTALA, which is which was a law that was signed by Ronald Reagan back in 1980, extending emergency Medicaid to undocumented people, which is the morally right thing to do in my view. That all being said, the far right constantly putting out this idea that undocumented people are mooching off the government. It's quite the opposite. In fact, we as the United States are receiving way more benefits because these people pay taxes into a system that they never receive the benefits of. So in fact, I, as a legal, US born citizen, part of it is like I could be receiving benefits from undocumented people that pay into the system, and I could be receiving some of their benefits, hypothetically. Unless if they were a US citizen, then it would be more fair for them. But undocumented people are a net, they put in so much to our economy. Yet, in return, what does our country do to them? We demonize them. We spread fear and misinformation about them. Why can't we just get over our prejudice and have a common sense system that funds an immigration system that actually processes people's cases so they're not waiting 10 years just to get a hearing in front of a judge? And why is it that so much energy is put into spreading fear, anger, and hatred of these people instead of actually doing anything to solve it? We think building a wall is going to help? No, you're trying to put a Band-Aid over a gushing wound. It's not going to help. And also, we're a country made up of immigrants, so why are we demonizing them just because they have a different skin color? It's stupid. It purely is stupid. And from an economic perspective, America is leaving money on the table because if we granted citizenship to these people, we could be making more money in taxes. Taxes to help fund programs to help low-income working-class people. I have to get to work. Anyway, I love all of you so much. I appreciate, I hope this live was really, really helpful. I hope this provided a lot of context and information. I want to be talking about this more and more over the next coming days. But I'll be breaking more of this down. So I appreciate every single one of you. Someone says illegals don't pay taxes, you need to learn. Oh, bless your heart. You cannot get through to some of these rage typing robots. Anyway, I appreciate every single one of you. Shout out to my amazing moderators. Kate, Akicha, Elisa, Ellie, I love all of you. Cherie, Joanna Tech, Kantisa, I love all of you so much. Akicha, you're awesome. Anyway, just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, you are strong, and you are fierce. Don't let anyone or anything ever, 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 ever dim your shine. I love all of you so much. Bye!